Good morning, business students. So it's this time of year that I normally get an email from some students saying, I've run out of past papers, what will I do? And clearly your teachers will buy you in papers from the usual sources that write very good exam style papers. And there's loads of stuff out there, and the very generous Edexcel obviously give you access to the majority of their assessment materials and the mark schemes, more importantly the examiner reports, so you can see exactly what the examiners were looking for, common mistakes, therefore you can make sure you don't make the common mistakes. Read the examiner reports, they're gold dust, and they give you answers that you can mark as well, see if you agree with the chief examiner. Now, there's lots of stuff out there, but I thought I'd just do a quick revision session on some of those favourite finance topics, some of the basic stuff, nothing beyond the year one stuff here. And also there's a draw question in here. Remember, you can get draw questions in paper 2. We see supply and demand in paper 1 quite often. We've never seen a break-even diagram, so make sure you know how to draw one. You never know. I would have thought they could give you a bit of graph paper, and we'll see. So remember, loads and loads of past papers that are out there. Okay, so pop onto the website, you can download this, and you will also remember one of the documents that we've shared with you with a list to every single past paper question. And if you click on this little section, for example, in that document, you can then go to the case study. You then go to the awarding body website, download the mark scheme and the examiner report, and self-mark your work, or get a study buddy to do it, or maybe have an argument with the study buddy over it. Loads of stuff up there, especially liquidity. There's no excuse not to practice liquidity papers. And remember, there are past paper questions for all 4 themes, so it will tell you the level, as in, was it the full A-level paper or was it the AS paper? Now, we don't do the AS, but lots of the AS questions are perfectly fine for you to revise by. Even some of the 2 markers in the AS paper, which aren't available in the A level, they will assess your knowledge. Excuse me. So it's really important that you do these types of revision activities. Okay, so there we go. So quickly, let's do some quick fire. What do you know? So state 2 types of revenue of income. This is where you hopefully can remember to. There's a couple, just a couple for you. I'm not going to read the list to you, but there are some of the ones that you should know. And if you don't know, go and revise revenues. Explain why a business might calculate the margin of safety. So we're thinking about what is the margin of safety, what is the formula of margin of safety, and then we're thinking about how we could explain. This could be a 4-mark question in paper 2. It could be an 8-mark, assess the likely value of margin of safety to a company. Remember, Edexcel need to test roughly 20% of the paper to do with quantitative skills, so they need to ask you calculate questions. So here we go. So this is just sort of a rework of the formula, and it's totally abstract because we've not given you a case study. Okay, so, and this sort of thing, you might be able to find this sort of information in a mark scheme, for example, to double check your knowledge. State 4 outflows that could be recorded in a cash flow forecast. Paused long enough. You should be able to list them because there's loads of them. Okay, so make sure that you understand those sorts of outflows. Okay, pretty easy. You can look for those in a case study if it's an essay, and you can talk about how some of these might change over time. So we might class certain things as fixed costs, for example. Well, fixed costs actually might be semi-fixed because they might change over time. Yeah. But normally we're looking at a 12-month window, so that's why we call them fixed. Your variable costs, well, if I'm suddenly going to start buying more of stuff as I'm ramping up my supply of something, then maybe I get economies of scale of bulk purchase. Actually, that can affect my variable costs and variable cost per unit. So we need to think about some of these terms and question reliability and validity of them. Definitely reliability. Now, here's a question for you, which is a bit more to get you in the mood. This looks intimidating, but actually it's very, very easy. So we've got a little bit about the company. We've got our variable costs up here, selling price. Not that we probably need those, to be honest with you, because we've got the information in the table. So if I wanted to know my average selling price per box, I could take the total amount of boxes and, oh, wait a minute, we haven't got the right, there's something missing there. So what do you think we need to do to fill that box in? Maybe we take that and we times it by that. And even if we hadn't read the case study, what we could have done is we could have taken this year's figures, this table's completed, and we could have divided that by that, and then we would have got that, wouldn't we? So sometimes with your data that you're given, you can cross-reference it against each other to double-check, sense-check your answers. I would advise you to sense-check your answers sometimes. It doesn't take long, but pretty easy. And then we've got total variable costs down here, and we've got variable costs up here per box, and we've got how many boxes are there. You're not going to get a question this easy, but you might be thinking about, if you see total quantity and total variable cost in an essay, you could actually work out what the variable cost per box is, okay, and put that into an essay. So, pretty easy. That was without using this information up here. That was just by looking at the trend as such in the table. Pretty easy, okay? Now onto something that might be something that you could see in paper 2 this year. We've never had a break-even chart, and if we were, it would probably be a little bit like this. Now, think about, we've just calculated, obviously, these two boxes, and we've got figures of break-even, plot and label the following. Yeah, so it could be that we need to do this sort of thing. It could be that the question is complete the break-even chart, and it doesn't give you the plot and labeling, okay? But you need to know what you need to add to it, don't you? Okay, so we've got total revenue, fixed costs, total costs, break-even point, okay? We've got it over a period of time, so we've got this different series of numbers, so you're going to have to plot 1 year at a time. So if we look for total revenue, we would start with 0. We would then go to £2,500, okay? And so on and so on. What I would do if I was you, I'd pause this. I would maybe screenshot it, stick it into Word, plot the lines, see how you get on, make sure you label everything. Hopefully you paused. If you didn't, never mind. So here is something that you might get in your paper. Now, don't necessarily need to put those in there. I've obviously copied the diagram from somewhere, I wonder where, and I've added in the labels that I would expect to put into this type of diagram. Okay, so it's not quite on the graph paper that was on the first one. That's the sort of thing you'll probably see in an exam paper, and this is pretty much what the examiners would be looking for. Okay, easy. If you practice it, it's easy. If you don't, then if you see this question this summer, then it might be a bit unfamiliar and it might freak some of you out. So, moving on, same case study. So, Kaya had forgotten to include additional factory space in his calculations for fixed costs. These are now £150 higher than he originally thought. Calculate the new break-even. Okay, now we might see this in a paragraph with a separate data extract to do with numbers. It could be quite a simple calculate question. So we need to first of all write the formula in words. Whichever version you use, it doesn't really matter. As long as you know how to calculate contribution, then you'll be fine. Then we're going to work out what the new fixed costs are. And we know what our selling prices are. We had that in the previous case study, and we didn't need to calculate that because that was given to us. And that was given to us as well. So this is a common mistake where people don't read the case study properly, because sometimes the case study just gives you the information and students end up calculating stuff when they don't necessarily need to. So make sure you read the main body of the case study, and also if there's a little asterisk next to something with some more text at the bottom of the page, go and read that. Sometimes they put in the extra piece of information in that text at the bottom of a table of contents or something. Then we know our contribution and we work out the difference. Okay, so we've got 450 boxes there. Okay, so there's a big difference there. If it was an essay, 12 marker, for example, I might work out the percentage difference in boxes because of the higher storage space. Okay, so here's an 8 marker, and remember this question. Especially because I've put 8 marks next to it, it'll make more sense as we go through the video. Assess the benefits to hole-in-one of using a break-even analysis. You're not going to get a series of break-even analysis questions, I don't think, but I think if we're revising a topic, you should be able to calculate it, you should be able to draw in this case, and you should be able to write essays about it as well. So we've got P, however, we know we're looking for level 3. We know if we forget one, however, maximum of 7 marks, we miss 2, we get 4 out of 8. We want 3 chains of argument in each paragraph, and we do not need a conclusion. We've shown you the examiner report that states that. So think about the benefits. There's not going to be an essay here for you, but here's some benefits. Yeah, so you can read as well as I can, and here's some drawbacks. Obviously, the benefit that you write about, you need to find the drawback for it, because you can't just say one benefit is a totally unrelated however. The however needs to be in context. I'll use quotes if I was you. And the great thing is we've just worked out break even. So when you do this one, you can actually use some of the numerical information that you've done in the 4 marker, for example. Okay, and remember, Kaya made a mistake and didn't include all of those fixed costs. I'm thinking that might find its way into my answer somewhere. Okay, so this is where we confess. This is where Dobby the Dalmatian confesses and says, does this look familiar? Now, A-level students, if you want to revise in a slightly different way, and I don't think there's anything that beats proper A-level past papers, by the way, that is definitely the best thing that you should be revising from, using the examiner reports like mentioned to mark other people's work and get into the head of the chief examiner. However, if you want to dig a bit deeper into finance, let's say you're not comfortable with finance, I think it's really important that you understand that process that we've just gone through, how to calculate, how to draw, and how to write essays. There is a brilliant resource out there for you, totally free of charge, from Edexcel's website. And this, section B in this exam paper that I'm going to show you, is where you will find the business finance questions. Now we can see here, state 2. Well, clearly this is just checking your knowledge. Explain. We actually talked about that. Yeah, we could actually, write that as a 4 marker using the case study and the numerical data. So there's lots that we could be doing with this. And here is that question. Yeah, we can see it's exactly the same. All I did was take the question numbers out. Then, moving on, this was the question about the £150 hire. And you can see in this paper, they gave it 4 marks as well. This was actually an Edexcel BTEC paper. Now, Unit 3 is the only one that you need to worry about. Now, they also learn about personal finance. Now, I don't think you need to worry about part A in the paper, but part B is exceptional because there's nowhere to hide from business finance with the BTEC. They do a lot. They do exactly the same finance as you will in the A level, but actually they do probably a bit more with it. And because the assessment standards and style is slightly different in the A level, it makes you think. It makes you really think about how to use business finance in different situations. Some of the questions, like, add one number to another, well, clearly those ones are going to be a bit easier. But I'll show you some examples of some questions that are a bit more difficult, and they do remind me of 20 markers. So this one here, for example, I put 8 marks on it, and I changed it to assess. So it's quite easy for you to remove that and put assess and stick 8 marks on that. If you put 10 marks on it, it needs a conclusion. If you give it 12 marks, it then needs a MOPS. Okay, you can have fun with these. This mark scheme, however, is really set up for an 8 marker. Okay, so if you use the marking grid from the A level and the mark scheme from the BTEC, actually you've got all the answers you need to revise this topic. So I would call 6 markers 8 markers if I was using this as a bit of a revision activity. So much fun, of course. Now, if we think about some of the others, so I mentioned that you go through a series of questions, and here's an example in the second half of part B. It gets a bit more difficult. Okay, so we've got complete the statement. Okay, so you've got fill in the gaps. Okay, pretty easy. Calculate the gaps, and it will make you calculate a range of different things. Okay, it makes you think about it. Also, things like revising current assets, well, it's in this financial statement. So in some ways, you're revising current liabilities and non-current and stuff like that. And then you're doing the calculations as well. Great revision activity. And you're using stuff from a case study and over here as well. Okay? Then it goes on, same case study, but the thing with the BTEC is it builds up to a big essay at the end of the paper. So I definitely recommend those of you that want to be more confident with finance, have a go at these BTEC Part B papers, or Unit 3 Part B, sorry. So then calculate liquidity. Yeah. Then, this is obviously an easier one, calculate the new value. That's just a basic bit of maths. Okay, but up here, this is probably the equivalent of a 4 marker. Then we've got an 8 marker, and I think you could probably change that to a 10, and you can interpret the data. Yeah, think about it. So discuss how Kim's retained profits could be increased. Change that to assess. Okay, and we've got a forecasting type question, haven't we? Yeah, so they're talking about next year. Now this question, if you were to read through it and ignore that, what type of question could this be? Now, A-level students, you should be screaming at the screen at the moment because we've got option 1 and option 2. This is the technique we use for writing 20 markers. It's an evaluate question. If you were to write this like a 20 marker using the numbers, remember you've done all the calculations already. So whereas if I just gave you a financial 20 marker, you would need to do the calculations, then write the essay. The reason this is only 12 probably is because you've already done the calculations. Now just write your 20 marker with option 1, 2p paragraphs, 1 in favour, 1 against. Option 2, repeat, answer the question, justify, and consider the future, MOPS. Okay? Then, this is where you find it. So where the same website as you'd find your A-level past papers, just stick in BTEC Business. It's the 2016 ones I've been showing you. And you need to filter to find Unit 3. Okay, and like with the A-level examiner reports, you can see the examiner reports there. If there's a padlock over there, then you can't download it. But if you look, because the BTEC exam papers happen twice a year, there are loads of them. You won't need to do all of them, I'm sure, but if you want to practice your finance and be more comfortable about how to use the finance, then this is a great resource. Okay, there's the hyperlink to it if you want to copy that with your phone or whatever. If not, just use Google. I'm sure that you will be able to find it. Hopefully that was useful.